type and you see the letters pop into boxes, backspace, and they disappear like magic. So in this video, we're gonna be capturing the user input and populating them on our generated grid. So what we'll need to do is to wire up an event listener on the key down event. So for the entire document, we want to listen in for the key down event. And when that happens, here's what we'll need to do. We're actually going to need to capture the event itself. So rather than keeping this as an empty argument, I'll type in E or event or whatever you want. This will allow us to actually detect what was the key that was pressed. And we'll use that in the rest of this code block. So let's kind of document in comments what is it that we're going to be trying to do here. So we're going to be checking if the key was a letter, then we'll call the add letter function. Otherwise, if the key was a backspace, we're gonna call the remove letter. And then we're finally gonna have the if the key was enter, then we'll call the submit guess or something of that sort. Now let's go ahead and start doing that. So over here, this is gonna be checking if the event dot key is a letter, but obviously we cannot check it like that. So we're gonna have to create another function over here. Let's create a function called isLetter. So this is a function that will basically be returning true or false depending on whether the provided input was a letter or not. So what I'll do here is return, and we're basically going to be returning a Boolean value as I just said. So if the letter dot length is 1, and here we're going to use some regular expressions to basically ensure that whatever that letter is actually an alphabetical character, not a tab, not a shift, not an escape, none of those other keys. So the check that we're going to be doing here is we'll do that, anything between A and Z, and we want to ignore the case, and we'll call .test for that letter. So what is happening here is basically we're using this regular expression to test the provided letter. And if both of these are true, then this is going to return true. Otherwise, I'll return false. So over here, instead of this check, we will be calling isLetter and provide that event.key as an argument. If that's the case, we're going to need to call add letter, which is a function that we have not created yet, but it will also receive what is it, the key that we're trying to add. So just so we don't forget about that, let's go ahead and create this function, add letter, that will receive a letter, and it will do something. We'll figure that out in a second. Now, the next case here, if the key was a backspace, we'll do else if the e.key equal a backspace, then we're gonna need to call remove letter, and then finally else if the key was enter, then we're gonna need to call a function called submit guess. We'll save, and let's just make sure that we create those two functions to remove letter. Oh, would not receive that, and obviously the submit guess. Now I might be mistaken, but I believe those might be case sensitive, so I'll just go ahead and make sure that they are capitalized. All right, let's just remove those comments. Your code should be self-documenting or self-explanatory, that you can just still read it as English without the need for comments. Only when you have very complex logic is when you would want to use comments to describe what that logic is. Now let's think about what is it exactly that we're hoping this add letter function will do. One, it will need to figure out where are we in the current attempt, or which guess are we trying to make right now. We have rows and we have columns. Usually your rows are what defines the number of attempts, so how many attempts have you made so far, and then your columns is the current position. So as you're typing in, every time you add a new letter, you need to be pushing your counter for how many letters have you typed in so far, needs to be pushed in by 1. So that means we're gonna need to start capturing those as values. So here I'll create a variable. Actually, it should not be a constant. I'll call it let current attempt, and we'll start at 0. And let's let our current position to also equal 0. What will happen here is first we need to make sure that you're not trying to overflow beyond what the current position is. If you're already in position number 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, you should not be able or allowing the user to type in more letters. So what we'll do here is if the current position is less than or equal the number of columns we have. So we actually had this in our configs, columns. Now, because this is not the best descriptive variable name for what is it exactly we're trying to do, let me actually go ahead and rename that. So I'll do F2. That way I'm able to rename it everywhere in my code. And I will call this words length. And for the rows, that's the max attempts. Okay, now let's go back over here. We're checking if our current position is less than or equal the word length that we're gonna be trying to guess. If it is, then we're gonna need you to basically capture the current position or capture the cell at that position. So const cell, or which style it is, will be document.get element by ID. Our ID is cell-r, and here we can provide the actual row number. So this is the current attempt -c, where the number here is going to be the current position. Once we've captured what cell that is, we're going to be modifying the text content of that cell to be whatever the letter that was provided. And we're gonna need to make sure that we're also increasing the current position by 1. That way, the next time we call the add letter function again, we are calling it onto the next tile in the grid. All right, let's go ahead and save that. And let's see, what do we currently get? Actually, let me switch back to our actual game, not the one from New York Times. Let's fix this so it's a 5-letter word with 6 attempts. And here we go. Now, if I start typing in A, S, D, F, G, obviously you see them being typed in. If I hit the backspace button, nothing is happening. So that is the next thing that we need to go ahead and implement. So here's my remove letter function. And what that will do is first we need to decrease the current position because we don't want to be removing an empty cell. We basically need to push back our position counter 1 step back. After that, we're gonna capture the new cell and it'll be exactly the same as before. So let me go ahead and just copy that line of code. Once we've found our cell, we're gonna go ahead and empty it out. So cell.text content will equal an empty string. And that should be good. Let's try it out. If I type in something, it works. If I hit the backspace, it works. Now here's the kicker, because this is basically always decreasing whatever the current position is. This number may get into the negatives. So what we need to do here is before we even try to decrease our current position, we'll add a check that says if the current position is less than 0, then that's and only then should you be able to execute all of that code. We save and refresh. Let's go back, type in something, works, hit the backspace again. Okay, something is not working. Current position is less than 0. Oh, it should be more than 0, not less than 0, because it should never be less than 0. We hit save. All right, let's go back. If I start typing in, it works. If I start hitting the backspace, it works. If I keep hitting it and then I start typing again, it should go ahead and start populating into my cell. All right, looks great so far. Now the only thing left for us is what do we do when we hit the enter button? First, we need to make sure that there are no more spaces left. Like if I'm trying to type in something, if I hit the enter right here, that should not be accepted. Like my code has to check that you've actually provided a complete guess before you do that. So what we'll do is we will check if the current position is less than whatever the number of allowed word length is. If it is less, then we're gonna need to give you some sort of an error, word incomplete. We can also add it as an alert. So not only would it appear in the console, but it will actually present the user with some sort of an alert, and then we'll exit out of the function. And in the other case, this is when we're gonna be checking for the correctness of the word. But we'll do that later on. If I hit save, let's try it. If I type in something, hit enter, all is good. If I hit the backspace and I provide an incomplete guess and hit the return, I should get this error that says word is incomplete, which is correct. Now let me go ahead and try everything again, but this time let me open the inspector just to make sure that I'm not getting any sort of errors anywhere else. All right, so let me refresh. Let's start typing in something. Okay, looks like I have an error here that says cannot set properties of null, and is trying to set the text content, which is being done in line 50 over here. So it must be trying to add or to modify the text content of something that does not exist because it says it's null. So what I could see from here is that I was checking if the current position is less than or equal the word length. Now, because the arrays or the counters here are actually 0 based, I should not be checking for the equality. It's just if it's less, then it should be good. That way I'm not trying to change the text content of any cell that lives beyond what we currently have on the screen. So let's try it again. If I start typing and I'm going beyond, the counter should not be changing. If I hit the delete, all is good, no errors. If I provide a complete or incomplete guess and hit enter, we get this alert, and we also get it in the console as an error. And then if I provide a complete guess and hit enter, no errors comes out of that. So with that, our board is interactive, and now we actually need to judge the guesses that are being provided. We'll switch to our source control, provide a commit message of keyboard input complete, and commit and push.